So, I finally finished Resident Evil Village, and it's pretty decent. It's not my favorite of the series, but it certainly isn't a bad game either. I always thought that one of the biggest traits of a fun game is if I'm willing to play through it more than once, and I'm definitely giving this at least one or two more playthroughs. So, now that my initial thoughts are out of the way, I'm sorry, what were we talking about? Oh, come on! How's it hanging, everybody? This is the Broken Controller Club, home for Donkey Kong Country rage quitters and grown adults who still play video games regularly and watch classic anime but won't admit it to coworkers or loved ones. My name is Ed and I'm your host. Being a club member is easy. You just hit subscribe, and then if this thing ever gets monetized one day, we'll send out decoder rings or read vulgar jokes with them, and those will get me canceled, or maybe we'll send out festive hats or something. Now, before I really get into things, I do want to mention that there's some mild spoilers up ahead, but nothing that you can't already see from the trailers, and major plot spoilers are going to be avoided, so have no worries about that. So in Resident Evil Village, or Resident Evil 8, whatever the hell you want to call it, you play as Ethan Winters, hero of Resident Evil 7, and probably the most everyman type of hero in the series, at least that I can think of off the top of my head. If he were from New Jersey, he'd work at the Quick Stop with his friend Randall and complain about how he wasn't even supposed to be here today. The game starts with Ethan and his wife Mia, heroine and occasionally crazy homicidal chick from Resident Evil 7, haven't we all been there, chatting about where to hang their awful wooden live, laugh, love, and blessed decorations on the walls of their home, and then out of nowhere they get attacked by Chris Redfield of all people. He ganks their daughter Rose, and after nailing Ethan with the old Tokyo sucker punch, Ethan wakes up on the outskirts of the titular village and starts looking for his daughter. On his lighthearted and hilarity-filled adventure, he finds a whole new rogues gallery of nasties to deal with in this one. And I do mean nasty in a bad way, not like, you won't get nasty. Not that kind of nasty, not the good one. So before playing this, I thought that the village would feel almost like its own entity, and throughout the game it felt more like a hub that you come back to occasionally as it connects all of the major areas of the game. There's a lot of fun to be had in exploring everything in the village, and as you progress through the game and come back, you'll notice changes over time, like the sun being in different positions, or new enemies popping up in previously empty places to attack you, and I really liked that, and between that and the pacing, things never really felt stale throughout my playthrough. If you're familiar with previous games, then you're right to expect that everything looks a certain way on the surface, but that there's a lot more to be revealed as you progress. There's a lot of variety in the locations you'll visit from, and I'm sorry, my French accent sucks, so I'm just going to go ahead and say it, the large Castle Dimitrescu, everybody's familiar with by now, to a Bates Motel looking house that's isolated from everything, to a water area where you boat around, and a factory, and more. Each major area houses a different villain, and even though you're forced to approach them all in a set order, it doesn't really feel that linear, since exploring every little room and path rewards you with new gear or weapons, or notes that add to the lore and backstories of all the characters. Just like the previous games, you'll have maps that mark off rooms that you've cleared of items, and they'll be specially marked for certain keys you need, so while you do some backtracking, it's not really that hard to remember what you're doing, and it doesn't get frustrating. So in addition to our heroes from Resident Evil 7 that are in this one, we've got a whole new family of sideshow freaks to deal with, and I really liked the variety in this one. In my opinion, this game has the most unique batch of villains in the whole series, and unfortunately most of their origins and backstory aren't really given until about the last 10% of the game, and even then I wanted to know more after that. Definitely more so than Ethan, Mia, or Chris, since I already knew about them from last time. Whereas in the last game you had the Baker family, who actually were a family even after they became infected, the villains in this one also have a family dynamic, though it's not by blood and more by their leader, Mother Miranda, and how she brought them all together. Everybody's already familiar with femme fatale Lady Dimitrescu and her daughters, who kind of look like they have fruit punch mouth, either by the trailers and demos or by the legions of Instagram cosplayers fighting for attention from their simps and their allowances they get from their parents. Then you've also got Donna, the crazy doll, Moreau, the half-man, half-fish, and this guy Heisenberg, who can control metal like Magneto. And in case you're wondering, he doesn't have a sidekick named Pinkman. I don't know if anybody else felt this way, but they almost have a Tim Burton quality to them. Like, all that was missing was weirdly curved architecture and lots of stripes and Helena Bonham Carter. I think if you play the scene where they're all in the same room together and do some Danny Elfman sounding music with it, it would actually fit really well. La 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 When those guys aren't around, the Lycans definitely steal the spotlight as they're vicious and pretty scary when they get in close and attack, and they behave like the villagers in Resident Evil 4, and actually all the rank and file enemies in this game do. The only difference here is that shooting them in the knee won't actually drop them, and they dodge like 2 to 3 times as much. I have to say, my favorite character in this whole game is a new guy by the name of the Duke. He's the merchant you'll do all your business with, and he'll also give you some occasional hints, and he pitches in to help you from time to time. He fits right in with the rest of the cast and is very friendly and charming. And he can be pretty funny as well, and for most of the game, he's Ethan's only friend and support. On the other end of the spectrum, I think the weakest character in this game is probably Ethan himself. Yes, he's going through hell to rescue his daughter, but he's really whiny in this one, and sometimes when he'd freak out about something, I just laugh.
Why is everyone dying on me? Why the f*** is this happening again?
Also, there's a reference in the beginning of the game that he had military training, but he still can't shoot worth a damn, so I don't really know what the heck he was trained in. He also complains to Mia in the beginning because she wants to forget everything that happened in 7, and they've got a kid now, and she wants them to move on, and he flat out refuses to do it. He's that guy that'll ask for decaf at IHOP, and then the server will accidentally give him regular coffee, and he'll have the jitters for the rest of the day, and he won't stop bitching about it 5 years from now and go, "Do you remember that?" And what you really want to say is, yes, I do remember that, because once every 4 months you bring it up again whenever someone mentions coffee, so I have no choice but to remember it. We all know someone like that, and we don't invite them out very much if we can help it. Also, I want to talk about Chris for a hot second. I've got to say, he's kind of a prick now. Like, I know that it appears that he's a bad guy in the beginning, but anybody with a tenth of their brain working knows there's more to it than that. Also, I get that he's been through a lot, and that would harden anybody. But even with that in mind, that's one of my bigger complaints about the story in this is that I don't really like how he was written in this one. He had a lot of Boy Scout-like qualities in the first few games he starred in, and I really liked that about him. But in this newest one, he seems almost like he's being a jerk just for the sake of being one. As far as the gameplay goes, I'm going to say that this has the foundation of Resident Evil 4, but with the presentation of Resident Evil 7. And what I mean by that is that this is not nearly as scary or horrifying as 7, and has more of an action-oriented approach like 4. In fact, I'd say the most classically Resident Evil-like this game gets is in Castle Dimitrescu, since you're searching rooms and unlocking doors while Lady D is hunting you down. This is very reminiscent of 7, and that was with the Bakers looking for you, or of Mr. X coming after you in the remake of 2. There's a cool section of the game later on where you're disarmed and you have to just rely on your wits to get through and evade a pretty creepy enemy, and I thought that this was a great change of pace. The rest of the game felt a lot more like 4, where you'd get money and treasure to sell off and spend to upgrade your weapons or stock up on items, with the action picking up more towards the end of the game. Ultimately, this will be a big factor in how much you like this compared to 7. In that one, from the start of the game, there was this sense of dread of trying to search the house while being hunted by the Bakers, and that's not really present here. On the other hand, all the stuff that made 4 fun, like upgrading weapons or selling off treasures, is. Being that this is a more action-heavy game, there's a good variety of weaponry offered, and you'll get to upgrade them, and you also get to combine materials to make ammo and other items just like in previous games. There's no item box this time around, and the game takes the attaché case approach like in 4, so when you come up with a better pistol than the one you've got, you're expected to sell that off to pay for upgrades with this one. You can also upgrade your case to fit more stuff in it throughout the game, and by the end of the game, you're really going to need it. One last thing I want to mention about your upgrades is that you can also upgrade your health and other stats by killing animals and giving them to the Duke to cook food for you. You'll hunt chickens and fish and some pigs who will fight back, and this was a fun little distraction that pays dividends down the road if you decide to find everything. As you can expect, this game is gorgeous. There were a lot of times I'd catch myself looking at architecture and details in each room upon entering, and it all looks and feels intricate. You'll see torn wallpaper pieces or lace behind curtains, and getting up close shows you just how realistic it all looks. It's impressive that the game's even better looking than the last one. In particular, I was in one of the houses and noticed through the window that an enemy was coming to the door. Not really a big deal normally, but the window had condensation on it, and I could still see the enemy's distorted figure through the glass as if it was real. The characters all look great, and the motion capture is spot on as well. Like, there's a really cool extra after you beat the game that shows the production of the scenes in the game, and you can see just how far along the motion capture is progressing. Also, I would definitely suggest that you play this with headphones because it sounds great too. The DualSense makes use of the adaptive triggers, so you'll feel the resistance of the trigger when firing a gun, and when enemies get near Ethan, he'll start breathing heavily even before the bad guy music kicks in. While in the castle, you could hear the clacking of Lady D's heels as she's walking around, and it was fun to kind of guess where she was coming from so you could try and avoid her. So I mentioned a few things I didn't like already, and really the rest of my nitpicks are just dumb things in the game that broke the immersion for me. Some of these actually get wrapped up by the story, but they still kind of bug me, so I'm going to talk about them anyway. So for starters, what the hell is with Ethan's hands constantly getting maimed or cut off? I mean, 20 minutes into this game, he gets almost half his hand eaten off by a lichen, then later on he would get what I think are even worse injuries to them. Also, all the damage he takes, whether it's acid or getting stabbed with a drill, whatever it may be, it all shows up on his hands. Now, before you think I'm an idiot more than you already do, I know that it's because his hands are the only physical representation we have of him. It doesn't mean that it's not ridiculous to watch though, especially after losing his hand in the last game. And if you get your hand chewed off by what's basically a wild animal, a bandage isn't going to stop the bleeding. That guy would have been dead from blood loss long before the game ended, not to mention he probably would have gone through shock, if not from that wound, then from all of the subsequent ones he gets. And in order to heal, he just puts some sort of first aid liquid salve combo thing on his hand, and then he's fine. Also, the AI in this game isn't really great. If an enemy chases you, whether it's one of those creepy bald guys or Lady D herself, you can usually just run around the furniture to evade them and then just run out the room after. Or if you're in the castle, apparently Lady D doesn't follow you into the Duke's room for some reason. That removed all of the tension from that section of the game, and it was really disappointing. I don't think the safe rooms should be as easily accessible as they were because the dread that you'd feel from having Jack Baker find you in 7 was basically missing from this game. So to wrap things up, Resident Evil Village isn't my favorite game in the series, admittedly, but I had a lot of fun playing it still, and plan on doing it again here really soon. The scares are kind of minimal compared to 7, but the villains are really cool and unique. The gameplay is a little more action-heavy like 4, so people like me who aren't good at puzzles will enjoy that. Also, when you beat it, there's lots of unlockable weapons to get along with Mercenaries mode for some added fun, and to compare this to 4.1 last time, all the New Game Plus playthroughs with all the super-powered weapons made that game really fun, and I'm pretty confident it'll be that way with this one too. There's some dumb AI, and I didn't really like Ethan or Chris all that much this time around, but that shouldn't dissuade you from playing what's a pretty memorable Resident Evil title altogether. That's it for this review. I hope you enjoyed watching it, and we're going to do this again soon. La 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 Congratulations! You're one of an elite few to make it to the end of the video. Reward yourself by hitting the round subscribe button in the middle, and then check out the other goodies I've got in the links next to it.